Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Captain Stoddard. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today about shortages. And today I will be discussing FDA's role in preventing and mitigating drug shortages. And the objectives I have here is describing FDA's role in prevention and also our role as the drug shortage staff in CDER, and also understanding the ongoing reasons for drug shortages as well as new challenges to the U.S. drug supply. Our mission is to prevent and mitigate and alleviate drug shortages. And our priority is to ensure that patients and providers have access to medications that they need. Just a brief history about the drug shortage program. It started in 1999, actually started with a half an FTE, and now we have grown to 15 staff members. And I do want to highlight, even though it's 15 staff members, we work with a large group of people within FDA that work on a particular shortages. So it's not, we facilitate the shortage issues, but we work with a huge staff within FDA to address any particular issue. And then also, we were elevated into the center director. We were under O&D, First Office of New Drugs, but we were elevated to the center director in 2014. I also want to note that there is a separate shortage staff within the Center of Biologics, as well as the Center for Devices that handle shortages for biological drugs as well as devices. We did have a huge increase in shortages in the 2010-2011 period, where we had 2 manufacturers shut down, and that created a large number of shortages for us. And right after that, President Obama signed an executive order on reducing drug shortages. And then soon after, we had the 2012 FDASIA legislation that required early notification for manufacturers to report to us any disruption. And then recently in 2020, we have the CARES Act, which added notification requirements for API manufacturing and discontinuations and interruptions. The drug shortage staff oversees and facilitates the resolution of all drug shortages. And we do this by working with manufacturers on short-term and long-term strategies and address actual and potential supply interruptions. We don't want to just address the immediate issue. We want to work on long-term issue to ensure future supplies also. We work with various stakeholders to develop a risk-benefit analysis for each specific situation. We are also responsible for distributing information on our drug shortage website. And we do this by including information about that shortage on the website. So we have a lot of resources on our drug shortage website. And we also work with professional organizations such as ASHP. We work really closely with them, and they have their own drug shortage website, as well as patient advocacy groups. When we share information with outside groups, we definitely ensure that we do not provide any confidential information and ensure that that is protected for companies that share information with us. Shortage situations can be different, and each can present its own challenge. However, the goal is to maintain availability while minimizing risk to patient. How does the FDA determine if a drug is in shortage? First, I'd like to define, this is our definition of a drug shortage, which is a period of time when the demand exceeds the supply of the drug. We prioritize drugs that are life-saving and have the most impact on public health. However, we do work on and address shortages of all drugs. This is a slide of the supply chain, and really it identifies our sources of information that we get of supply and demand information. We have established a relationship with manufacturers as well as professional organizations and advocacy groups. Manufacturers are required to report to us the supply disruption. However, demand and inventory production information is voluntary supplied to us by manufacturers as well as wholesalers. We also use IQVIA database, which provide us with sales and market share data. This helps us gain a general picture of the historical burn rate or usage of a drug, as well as most recent market shares for the current product manufacturers. And lastly, we have a public email account, and most recently, we have now a drug shortage, a public database where patients and healthcare providers can report to us shortages. And we do explore and respond to every public notification that we receive. And these sources help us gather information and get a picture of the supply situation. The notification requirements are summarized here. Manufacturers and applicants notify FDA of a permanent discontinuance and also any interruption in the manufacture of such products that will likely lead to a supply disruption. And that now notification is required of similar of the API suppliers. As I mentioned before, we work with various parties inside and outside the agency. We gather information from outside stakeholders to get a clear picture of the supply situation and overall shortage. We receive shortage inquiries from the public, which includes healthcare providers and patients. And we will investigate to determine if a true drug supply issue exists nationally, or it could be sometimes a localized issue. We meet regularly with our international partners to discuss current shortages. We share with them information on the shortages that we are experiencing, as well as letting them know what we are doing about to address the shortages. Also, we work with them when we are looking for an import to address a shortage within the US. We work with our international colleagues to identify a source that could help with the shortage in the US. We also work with other US agencies such as Center for Disease Control and DEA on various shortage issues. And then, of course, we work with the manufacturers, not only the ones that are experiencing the issue, but also those that are could potentially, alternate suppliers that could potentially help or assist during a shortage situation. We really value the relationship we have built with industry, and our communications and collaborations are very important for us and for our ongoing drug shortage work. Once we receive a notification, it is assigned to one of our DSS staff member to evaluate the information received and determine if there is a drug shortage concern. DSS will also coordinate any activities and communication needed to address the shortage concern. If it is confirmed that a shortage exists, then we may post information on our website, and we'll continue to monitor that particular shortage until it is resolved. What can FDA do to help mitigate, prevent, or limit drug shortages? So we really work closely with the manufacturer to address any issue or any help that they need assistance with, but ultimately the manufacturer must address the root cause. What we can require, as I mentioned, now we have the notification that they are required to let us know if there is any potential for a disruption under the 506C of the FD&C Act, as well as discontinuations. And also, they are required to notify us of certain quality events or manufacturing changes. But we cannot require a company to make a drug or make more of a drug, and we have no control over their distribution, where the drug goes, to which purchasers, and how it's distributed. We prioritize medically necessary products as defined. A medically necessary product is defined as, a product that is used to treat or prevent a serious disease or medical condition for which there is no other alternative drug available in adequate supply that is judged by a medical staff to be an adequate substitute. When we receive a shortage report, the first thing we want to do is we consult with our review division, the clinical division, to first find out if the drug is medically necessary. And that helps us prioritize our work as well as also make risk-based decisions. We continue to work and encourage firms to report to us disruption, but we also now are encouraging them to report to us any increase in demand. And we highlight that in the guidance to industry on notification of supply disruption, but it's currently not a requirement for industry to report disruption caused by increased demand. We also expedite review of anything that would increase supply, such as additional lines, raw material suppliers, and we facilitate anything that will help facilitate to help mitigate and prevent a shortage. And we also expedite ANDAs that are in the queue for shortage drugs to increase longer-term manufacturing capacity and prevent future shortages. These are just, highlighting more of the additional tools that we have. First, in an emergency situation, we have an emergency portal that we can reach out proactively to all of our industry contacts and requesting that they let us know if they anticipate any supply issues as a result of the emergency event. If there is a shortage concern for a particular drug, we do reach out to the other suppliers to let them know of the shortfall, of course, without sharing any confidential information. And and this will prompt firms to look at their demand and supply. When a potential or actual supply disruption is reported by a manufacturer, we request information from the manufacturers on anything that would mitigate or prevent a shortage, such as proposal to maintain availability while minimizing risk, such as one example is validating a filter to remove a particle and we put that in a Dear Healthcare Provider letter that is available on our website. And that really what is regulatory discretion is the next point here is flexibility that gives the agency to maintain availability while minimizing risk to patients. The filter example I just mentioned is one example. However, there are numerous examples of regulatory discretion, and that includes use of an unapproved API, possibly where a firm is working on a new supplier, so that could also occur with the regulatory discretion. Of course, we ask for additional safety controls that can be used, such as extra testing, third-party oversight. Extension of expiry dating is another thing that we could give regulatory discretion for, and that would be for specific lots, and those are the lots that are already in distribution. So that means the company will provide us with additional stability data that's submitted to us and reviewed by our reviewers within FDA, and if it's deemed adequate, then those lot numbers will be posted on our website with the new expiration date. Temporary importation is our last resort, and that's when we look for an outside source where the U.S. manufacturers are no longer able to meet the market demand within the U.S. We look for an ex-U.S. source. And when that happens, and you can see here several of the drugs that we have imported in the past, we also encourage those manufacturers of the ex-U.S. product to submit an application to FDA, and this way, if they're approved in the U.S., we have an additional source now that we can rely on for future supply. Early notification is key to prevention. The increase in early notification and our ongoing work with manufacturers has led to increased number of prevented shortages. The earlier we know, the better chance of preventing a drug shortage. Now, some shortages can endure for months, for years, depending on the precipitating event. And of course, not all shortages can be prevented. There are unanticipated events that can occur, such as public health emergency, manufacturing breakdown, and natural disasters. Other manufacturers also may not be able to meet the shortfall. They don't have enough capacity. If a shortage cannot be prevented, we do encourage allocation by companies to evenly distribute supply. We also encourage, but cannot require, firms to have safety stocks and to distribute that safety stock inventory via direct distribution during a shortage to minimize hoarding and overbuying. This slide, this is 2022 data. 2023 will be out soon. The majority of the potential or actual drug shortages that we see is related to quality issues and manufacturing delays. However, recently also we have started to see an increased reports of shortages due to increased demand. Some of our current challenges include, as I mentioned, increase in demand. Some of the types of drugs that we're seeing increase in demand, the narcotics, the IV fluids, the weight loss drugs, and also during an example of is even COVID, we saw an increased demand where a lot of hospitalized patients, and there was a high demand for the drugs of critical drugs within the hospital. Also loss of overall market capacity, recent bankruptcy that we've had, plant closures. Then we have the industry-wide short supply of manufacturing components and commodities, filters, glass, and stoppers. And then also we are seeing new quality-related issues found on inspection. And of course, as mentioned, impurities such as nitrosamine, that's been an ongoing issue also at the, that we are working on at the agency as a whole. And also natural disasters, the recent tornado impact that impacted the Pfizer North Carolina facility. And of course, the economic issue is that we have lack of market certainty to support investment and continuous improvement. What can industry do to help decrease drug shortages? The role of industry is to understand the vulnerabilities and frailties of their supply chains. It's important to communicate to us early on if there is a potential shortage issue. Provide us with a short-term and a long-term plans or proposals for addressing, preventing shortages while also working to maintain and improve quality. Provide us with information that we can post on the website when a shortage is unavoidable, and also work with us at FDA to minimize shutdowns and slowdowns that could lead to shortages, and adopt a more mature quality management practices, as mentioned. Some additional solutions, the risk management plan, and that was one that was required as part of the CARES Act of 2020, where there is a guidance that will have information about what to include in those plans. We want firms to have backup plans if there is a sudden manufacturing failure or demand increase, redundancy in manufacturing, additional lines, additional manufacturing sites that you have as backup when there is an issue. And more capacity, more overall capacity of additional manufacturers making critical drugs. In the past, I've been with shortages for many, many years, but we've had drugs where it had 5, 6, or even 10 manufacturers, and now we're down to 3, 2, or even sole source. So that's very important to encourage additional manufacturers to come on the market for these vulnerable generic drugs. And then also focus on quality management maturity and continuous improvement. I will end with just a quote from Dr. Califf. He said, "We have got to fix the core economics if we're going to get this situation fixed." And that's all I have. Thank you. This is our just some links to our drug shortage notification portal, our email, and also our website. Thank you very much.